Howdy, folks. This is Lee Larson. You're back with another episode of Follow the Leader. I am so glad that you were here. Folks, we have David Clayton from North Carolina running for the 5th Congressional District joining us here. David, hi.
Hello, everybody. And Lee, thanks so much for having me on your show. Lay or Lee?
It's Lee. Yes.
Lee.
Oh, yes, my mom. 5 letters, 2 were pronounced. Go figure. I love the woman. Could have spelled my name a lot easier though. But yes, so glad you're here. Tell us, all right, North Carolina. The current person who is holding office has held it since 2005. She's an 82-year-old lady. Her name is Virginia Fox. Tell me, what what motivates someone like you to take on someone who's been in office since 2005?
Because of people like that, um, not reading the room, not being in touch with the general public, not understanding what the general public's hardships are, not being able to relate with her constituents, regardless how they're registered to vote. The time of the old guard in the establishment is past, and I'm here to remind them all that their time is past. It's time to make way for the younger generations, younger than myself included. And the only way we're going to do that is to root out the corruption, both illegal and legal alike, made possible by things like Citizens United. So I've got a 2-term, 4-year pledge. I may not be able to achieve voting into law term limits, though I do support term limits, but I'll make damn sure to call out the corruption to its face, and not be constrained by such things as decorum or house rules that prevent me from making everything transparent as it deserves to be in the American public. So yeah, their time is coming to an end, and I think what we're seeing right now is their last death grip on the power and the corruption and the greed that has enabled them to remain in power for far too long.
Absolutely. Career politicians that are, like you said, with Citizens United, serving the companies that have donated to their campaigns and not to the people. And that's a large reason of why we're here. I see on one of your policies that you're looking to really advocate for is the no stock trades. Talk to us. Oh, stock trading in politics and Congress.
You
Why
know,
is this?
yeah, absolutely. I was fortunate enough to interview Representative Magaziner, who is one of the co-signers. Someone who I don't respect is also a co-signer named Chip Roy, but I do respect the bill of banning stock trades from elected representatives. I don't think their bill goes far enough. I think their bill has too many holes in it. And part of me is wondering if it was built that way on purpose so that it looks like it's taking a stand against insider trading and stock trades, for the American public, just to get the American public to shut up about it. But the American public is sick and tired of these people becoming ungodly wealthy over something that is publicly illegal, like insider trading. I'd like to see stock trades be banned and that being expanded to direct as well as indirect family members of the representative. Because what good is it if someone is on an armed services committee or something like that and about to award a government contract to a private company, and that person's family member can buy stock in that company just as easily with no ramifications. So yeah, if you're an elected representative, I think that should be expanded onto your direct and indirect members of family to really put an end to this type of corruption.
Absolutely. I thank you. I know that you have worked and talked with folks all across the country. Tell me, you had a heck of a road trip that ended or landed with you interviewing with a 2-time Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, Thomas Grisk. Tell me about this road trip.
Yeah. So if you Google homeless veterans work for a living, task and purpose, you'll pull up the article I was asked to write by, as you just stated, two-time Pulitzer Prize winner Thomas Ricks, because he heard about my journey that I was doing between 2017 and 2019, where I drove um, across 33 states of our nation, passing out survival gear to our homeless veteran population. I was passing out fishing poles and tents and hand and foot warmers and ponchos. If our government won't ever do anything more than talk about supporting our veterans, and we have approximately 250,000 veterans living on the streets today. The VA has approximately 75,000 registered as homeless that are receiving benefits, but NGO data has that number closer to 250,000. So that means that there's roughly 125,000 veterans that aren't receiving benefits that are homeless. So I got sick and tired of hearing our government just say, yeah, we really support our troops. I'm not a veteran myself. I've said that plainly many, many times. I come from a long lineage of veterans. And if I was able to live in this land of the free and take benefits from those that have sacrificed so much for all of us, then I personally feel it should be all of our civic duty, our civvy duty, and responsibility to care for those who have. Um, we see a lot of veteran on veteran support in direct action, and unfortunately, we see too little of civilian on veteran support for direct action. So I aim to change that. I proposed a piece of legislation because I was hearing crickets in DC. Um, I decided after I was hearing crickets in DC from my proposed legislation, the Character by Integrity Act to house homeless veterans, that I was just going to start driving the country. And I did so for 2 years from coast to coast, through sandstorms and heat waves to blizzards, places like Colorado Springs. And of the 312 homeless veterans I helped, there was only one instance of notable substance abuse and/or mental instability. The rest of them were of sound mind and body, just could not afford the cost of living, and working out of their cars and trucks, living out of their cars and trucks, mostly across like Walmart parking lots. Um, so yeah, I did 33 states. I crisscrossed the nation 7 times, and
Wow.
the only reason I stopped was because my mother, her health started taking a turn for the worse. So I had to go home and take care of her. And then I ended up being her caretaker till her last moments. And that also um, kind of fueled my fire of wanting to expand and secure things like Medicare and Medicaid for our nation's most vulnerable population. So there's so much that needs to be done across our country, and the sad fact of the matter is everyone can say that they want universal health care, or they want firearm reform, or they want better education, or they want to secure things like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security and pensions for people that are now having to take door welcoming jobs until they're 90 years old at places like Walmart. But nothing is really going to be achieved. We're going to continue this vicious cycle until we just kick out this corruption that is preventing everything from being fixed. So that's my aim in this 2-term pledge. Is in the first 2 years, I'm going to put a red dot on my forehead. I'm going to go in and I'm going to call out the corruption to its face, regardless of House rules or what you're supposed to say or not supposed to say. I'm going to be blunt. I'm going to be honest, and I'm going to call a spade a spade. And I'm not just going to name drop those on the take in office, but I'm also going to point out exactly who's buying.
I admire your courage. I want to, first of all, acknowledge my condolences for the loss of your mother. Um, and yes, those very personal experiences are, like you said, the things that give us fire. Once you're seeing how health insurance companies work, elderly care, and then of course compounded with your homeless veterans service. I mean, you didn't just serve homeless veterans in one area. You saw them in conditions across the country. You got to listen and hear more about their stories. Tell me, what are some things that you think the public should know after? I know you said that you only had the one instance. Are there other stories you can share with us from your travels?
Yeah, I mean, like I cited before, if you go to that task and purpose article I wrote, there was a gentleman I met in Pismo Beach. He tried to sell me his Purple Heart so that he could buy what he said would be his last meal because he was planning on adding to that 22 per day horrific statistic and take his own life. I said no. The fact that Donald Trump boasts about taking a Purple Heart from another service member that got conned into giving it to him is absolutely abhorrent because um, if someone has received that Purple Heart, that means that they earned that Purple Heart. That's not something that you can just give away or buy from somebody else. So I politely declined his offer to sell me his Purple Heart, and I bought him dinner anyway. And then I sat up with him. We're just at Pismo Beach on the sand dunes, watching the waves and eating some cheeseburgers. And I sat up with him until the sunrise just to listen to him. And he was telling me that uh, it didn't matter. He couldn't afford the cost of living. He wasn't drunk. He wasn't on drugs. He just could not keep up with the cost of living. And this environment that is really there isn't a very good reassimilation process from our service members into civilian life. There's within all the active duty friends I've made and veteran community I've made have all told me and reaffirmed that when you're in there's this brotherhood and sisterhood. You've got so many, you're never alone. You've got so many avenues to lean on and to be lifted up and to be reinforced. But as soon as you're out and you get your D 214, it's kind of like cutting the umbilical cord and saying, hey, good luck. You're on your own. And I don't think our country has really done nearly a good enough job of reassimilating after the contract date, which should be something that our government upholds. Is not just saying thank you for your service. Here's your contract expiration, but going further and taking care of the reassimilation process back into society to make sure that it's not just here's a list of groups you can talk to, or here's a list of charity organizations. Like we've got a $980 billion annual budget with our Defense Department. I'm sure we can put aside $10 billion in a reassimilation program to make sure that not a single veteran who does not want to be homeless is homeless, to make sure that they've got a job waiting for them, make sure that they've got all the resources to get back into normal everyday civilian life. We've got the ability, we've got the capability. It's just whether or not we do it or not. Like, for instance, I would really like to see a law that would help with reassimilation, a career path law, a veteran career path law that says that if you have been trained or have a skill set, your MOS, while in service, whether you're a corpsman practicing medicine or whether you're an electrician or a mechanic, um, um, a litany of professions that require civilian certification and schooling for. If you've passed your military certification and training for those things, why do they have to go to school in the civilian sector and pay for re-education on all those things again when they're coming straight out of service with that education level already into them? So why don't we have a seamless transition of civilian certification on those processes instead of making them pay for these things over again? There's so many different things that we can do to pay the respect that is absolutely past due for all of our service members. And that's one thing that I really want to kind of shine the spotlight on too, is this guy at Pismo Beach. I stopped him from taking his life that night. I hope he's still here. I don't know if he is. Um, but the one thing that he said that really stuck with me is that everyone thanks me for my service, but nobody asks me why. Nobody cares. And that really kind of hit me because, people like this gentleman, people like you, people like all our service members, in my personal opinion, have already earned this life. This is my path to trying to earn this life. Um, I've done some good things in my life. If my time were to come tonight, I would leave this earth content what I've contributed back to humanity. Um, but there's so many people in this world who have given so much, and it's just like another Tuesday if we lose them all of a sudden. And I don't like that. I don't think that should be normalized ever. Um, on some mini documentary that followed me around when I was driving the country, um, said called me extraordinary. Said the work I was doing was extraordinary. I stopped him. I said, "No, this is why everything's upside down right now. What I'm doing should not be seen as extraordinary, but should be seen as ordinary. This kind of stuff, civil service, humanitarian aid, should be the norm. Doing the bare minimum really shouldn't be the measure for praise. It should be normalized in everyday life."
Well, and that's exactly like you said. Like this is how that you are embodying the vision you want for the world. If you want other people to, do humanitarian or servant-minded behaviors, like, you do that. You're the role model. You've shown that. You have lots of experience to back up what you're preaching. Um, your work with homeless vets has been incredible. I will back up that person. I think it's extraordinary. It's okay. You can keep the humility. That's fine. But I think that's exactly like the kind of heart we need in politics. These real people that have been impacted by losing loved ones and navigating Medicaid, Medicare. It's the homeless veterans, and like you're seeing this all the time. You're hearing these stories. Um, you know, suicidal ideations, the struggling despite having the experience and skills, but not having a smooth onboarding back into society. These aren't partisan issues that you're talking about right now. Like wanting our people who have served our country to be able to integrate back into society is not, that shouldn't be a Republican or Democrat talking point. I really admire that you're running for independent. Tell me and walk us through um, what what prompted you to choose independent, and what are some of the pros and cons with that?
Yeah, so our nation is in the middle of a gerrymander war, and we're seeing it with red states that are trying to add red seats. We're seeing it with blue states trying to add blue seats. That's not the answer. Um, it's our nation is more polarized than ever before, where registered Republicans, even if they can't stand their representative, like Virginia Fox, if they see another option being a D or a Democrat, they just won't vote for that person, even if that person has their best interests at heart. And vice versa. I have yet to see a Republican candidate that would be the best interest for the constituents, um, because really they have just so normalized the corruption and stuff to the point where when a Democrat is caught of doing the exact same thing, it's complete silence on holding the Republican accountable, but it's complete anarchy and chaos in the outrage and calling for the Democrat accountability. And I think our nation as a whole, aside from the amount of seats which lean one way or another, red or blue, we are actually seeing unprecedented amount of Americans that are leaving the Democrat Party or leaving the Republican Party and registering as either unaffiliated, independent, or no affiliation. They all pretty much mean the same thing. And I am an unaffiliated independent. I was a lifelong registered Democrat, and I stand by my votes. I know that we would not be in this mess that we're in today if Harris had won, which I partially still believe she did. But yeah, I'll never be ashamed of my past voting record. Pardon me, past voting record. But I also understand that we're in changing times where we're seeing this establishment core on both sides of the aisle that are absolutely not putting the American people first. They are only about party lines. They're only about achieving, small wins for themselves, which amount to no wins for the general public lately. on both sides of the aisle. So North Carolina, of all states, I knew that Virginia Fox would be vulnerable and susceptible. Besides the fact that she's 82, she's going to be 83 years old in these midterms. She is a loyalist to Donald Trump, regardless of illegalities, civil rights disturbances, violations, or unconstitutional practices. She supports his efforts blindly without any kind of pushback that is directly hurting North Carolinians' lives, such as Donald Trump, for the second time this year, has denied ongoing FEMA funding for repair and recovery efforts for Hurricane Helene. So these people don't represent their constituents that are even voting for them. And their constituents out here, they're mostly, it's a ruby red district. They're mostly Republican. But I've talked to thousands upon thousands of them. They can't stand Virginia Fox, but they will never bring themselves to check that box with somebody's name that has a D next to it for Democrat. So I'm going to give them a viable option, not
Yeah.
the old antiquated, a third party vote is a throwaway vote, because there are simply not enough registered Democrats in this district to win. And I've been getting a lot of pushback from the establishment Dems, saying, why don't you run as a Dem? To my response of, I'm pretty sure I could easily win a Democrat primary. But then I would lose the general election because, frankly, bluntly, honestly, I don't need Democrat votes here to win. I need Republican and unaffiliated to win. And the DNC won't seem to listen to that message. They'd much rather back a losing ticket than take an out-of-the-box approach like I'm trying to do, to fire an 83-year-old MAGA representative that has done absolutely nothing in 20 years in her public service except enrich herself and enrich her donors and her colleagues on the MAGA side of things. Yeah, it's I'd actually like to say it's a new strategy, because I'm no Jill Stein third party. I'm no I'm definitely no Fetterman. I'm definitely no Sinema or Manchin. And these third party votes, especially presidential candidates, they seem to show up out of the woodwork and then disappear, fall off the map. I've been here this whole time, and I'd really like to see more people try to take, especially in gerrymandered districts, this perspective and this attack strategy, because like I said, it's unprecedented time. There's more people registered as unaffiliated or independent than ever before. Yeah, it's something that I think a lot of us can do. And then if we have a wedge of unaffiliated independent representatives in Congress, that's going to force establishment on the Democrat side and establishment on the Republican side to come to us to vie for our votes to pass their bills. And if their bills do not support the American public, they're not going to get an approval from us. So, yeah, it's a new time, and I think this two-party duopoly power struggle, we're in the last I'd say 4 to 6 years of it, I believe.
It's brutal, and everything just feels stagnant. Like nothing is happening, unless it's done by sweeping executive order and a whole lot of illicit ways. One of the things you talked about was Virginia Fox. For the audiences listening in, Speaker of the House Johnson praised her and called her the Iron Lady of the House, for holding committees for 2 straight days and only taking 2 bathroom breaks. Folks, it's time for some new energy.
Yeah, I mean, at 82 years old, I don't think that's really a thing to brag about when she probably has a colostomy bag tucked away somewhere.
He praised her for her support of the big beautiful bill too, and which wasn't surprising. And like you said, those things go directly against North Carolinians, like the lack of funding from FEMA. I was in North Carolina over the past spring. I took my dog. We write children's books about my dog going to national parks. So we were doing Appalachian national parks, and beautiful country. Did Great Smokies over to Asheville and then went north up to West Virginia. And so I didn't make it as far east as you are or far south, but I mean that it's um, times are tough. Times are tough in Appalachia and in the east and anywhere. And I think you're absolutely right that running independent, it's what is most authentic to you. At the end of the day, like that is, you'll go to sleep knowing that you stood for yourself, that you didn't align yourself with something else and corrupt your message, um, because that's how it starts, folks.
I call myself a fiscally conservative progressive because progressive policies, if we really look at the statistics and the math of them, are fiscally conservative in the long run. So, you know, these people like Virginia Fox, they only have the corporations, what these corporations can donate to them in mind. And we also need, I just am in the works of writing it up and adding it to my website, but we need, especially North Carolina, we need workers' protections because of, you know, people being laid off by the hundreds of thousands or millions and replaced with automation and AI. Um, I think if those corporations that love donating to Virginia Fox, if they want to keep their tax cuts and their subsidies, their government subsidies, then they need to hire a minimum 80% human workforce to their 20% AI and automation. The whole reason they receive tax cuts and subsidies is because they have kind of made the phrasing of job creator a household name in order to earn those tax breaks and those subsidies. If you're no longer hiring human employees, you're no longer a job creator and you don't get those same benefits. So I'm going to be adding that as soon as I've worked out the math on it to make it a little bit more specific to my website, clayton4nc.com. I'm thinking about calling it the 80-20 Act.
Yeah, I think that's yeah. Um, Speaking of acts, real quick, I did want to ask you about your Patient Priority Act. Is this also walk me through that?
So I am my mother's son. I will always support women's rights. Women's rights are human rights. And right now, there's a huge attack paid for mostly by the Christian Nationalist Network to control women's bodies. The Patient Priority Act, one of the things, because all these different states are putting into law and the federal government is starting to look to see how they can make it a federal law to ban abortions, as we just learned. They just banned all abortions from the VA, which is just atrocious. Um, and look, this isn't a pro-choice, pro-life stance. This is simply put, what happens between a woman and her doctors is their business, is the woman's business. I fully support bodily autonomy. Um, you want to talk about being a Republican and being against big government, and yet you're cheering it on when big government is right in your face. Freedom does not mean turning a blind eye to the government coming in and telling each individual what they're allowed to do with their own body. So, yeah, a way to work around these laws, these oppressive laws that are being put into place in oppressing and controlling women's rights is to give basically an amnesty program to the healthcare providers, to saying that, what a doctor decides the best treatment for their patient is, they are then federally protected to carry out, what they feel is in the best um, health safety risk of their patient. So this isn't a this is kind of like, okay, so we're under this attack of all these little laws being put into place in different states. So you have to repeal those laws, and that's a whole process to go through. So instead, let's slip in, like they're always playing on their side, little caveats and little games. Let's slip in a protections law for healthcare providers to be able to take care of a patient's rights and a patient's privacy and what the healthcare provider thinks is the best course of action for that patient.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, because that's exactly like you're intervening with healthcare, medical decisions that are private. Um, and ultimately it's just not anyone else's business. And I darn sure as a taxpayer do not want to be paying for either a woman or a doctor to sit in a jail cell because of something, a conversation or actions that they took in a medical setting. That's weird for me. Like now I'm part of that. I don't want to be part
And,
of that.
and an entire staff of people in a bureau to monitor it and all this other. I mean, we're talking hundreds of billions of dollars. It's not just a piece of paper that says a woman isn't allowed to do this to her body. Now you're funding hundreds of billions of dollars to monitor what a woman's doing to her body, and that's just uh, there's nothing freedom about that. There's nothing free about that.
No. No, and it's wild too that there's so much push, you know, because Republicans love the family, right? They're always family values, let's have, but the economy's tough. It is simply tough to have a family, to buy a house. Uh, and then on top of it, we've got teachers that are leaving in droves. It's just, then you gotta think, it's a lot to think about family in this economy. One of I adore about your stories is that your family, your chosen family, are four-legged. You had your Chihuahua Boomer that went with you across the country, and now you have a husky named Boomer as well. Um, love I I love that you want to bring dogs back into politics because it's weird that there aren't dogs in the White House.
There's two types of people in this world: those that love animals because of the unconditional love that they give us, and those that don't. And I don't trust those that don't. And whether you're a cat person or a dog person or a fish person, it seems like this administration specifically hates animals because you got people like Christy Nome and that story with that puppy. But further than that, you've got other people in this administration that are actually trying to take things like wild wolves off of the endangered list so they can be openly hunted again. I mean, you've got this is the first president I think we've ever had that hasn't had an animal. And as far as I know, Donald Trump has never had a dog or a cat or anything. It really says a lot. I mean, I believe in when people say, well, dogs can sense evil, um, because they kind of can, and there's probably a reason why Donald Trump has never been around a dog. So yeah, Boomer the first, my Chihuahua. I was never a little dog guy in my life, but I was at a friend's airfield at a aviator appreciation day barbecue, and there was a dog shelter across the street, and we were leaving, and he said, "Hey, I want to stop in there and see if they have a husky." And I already know huskies are like the most wild, crazy dogs in the world, just such a pain in the ass to take care of. And I was like, "All right, man." And he found one, and that dog turned out to be like a destroyer of all his furniture and everything. Just made his life chaos. And while I was waiting for him to fill out the paperwork for his dog, I saw this little tiny 4-pound Chihuahua standing kind of like peacocked out, looking all you know tough behind the cage. And man, there were kids running behind me and stuff, but he was just fixated on me. And I was like, "You're Boomer," and that was it. I don't know where Boomer came from. A lot of people said Boomer Sooner from Oklahoma, but no, that wasn't it. It just kind of popped in my head. And yeah, he went everywhere with me. He was on the road with me when we were driving the country. We had an old 97 4Runner, and I dropped down the back seats and made it into a bed, and we just drove the country. I lost him December 7th of 2023. And that was one of the hardest days of my life. He was almost 16 years old. But we had a great, um, a great decade plus together. And he changed me for the better. I wouldn't be where I am today if it hadn't been for him. I wouldn't have drove the nation to help homeless veterans if it weren't for him. Um, and then today, flash forward, Boomer is gone. I'm living the best life I can to honor him moving forward. And I've got a new adopted dog named Boomer the Second. And when I saw him at the shelter website, his name was Sooner. He was this puppy, white puppy with uh, a husky, which he just looked so cute. I knew he
Yeah.
was going to be a pain in the ass to take care of, and he is. He's a natural disaster every single day, but I love him to death. But his name officially was Sooner, and I was like, Boomer Sooner. This is crazy. I
That's
gotta go check
wild.
him out. And I took him home. So that's the story of Boomer the first and Boomer Sooner the second.
That's a good story. Thank you. And thank you for your rescuing. I audience at home, I have a service dog as well, Professor Huckleberry, and he goes with me
Nice.
to write he goes with me to I love national parks and camping, and we've written children's books, and we do a lot around Montana with reading to kids from
I
Montana. He'll
love
go with
Montana.
me.
I
Oh,
I,
come
lo-
visit sometime.
I grew up there. My estranged now brother, my half brother, we fell out when he kind of well, he didn't kind of he did turn his back on my mother in her last moments. So we've completely fallen out. But his father was very very kind to me growing up. I always told my friends that I got the poor dad, my brother got the rich dad, and it kind of worked out that way in how both of us grew up because my estranged brother could kick rocks, but his father was very, very kind to me. And I was actually there in Montana fly fishing on the Beaverhead when they were filming The River Runs Through It. Other River Runs Through It. So I grew up. I did 3 or 4 trips, 2-week trips, fly fishing in Montana with. Thanks to my brother's father, who was very very kind to me growing up. But I love the Beaverhead. I love the Yellowstone, Bozeman, Livingston. I love all Montana. It's some of the most beautiful countryside and beautiful hot springs you'll ever find.
Absolutely, and I believe at 10% of the populate Montana population is veteran. So like maybe in the future we can talk about doing a retreat or something for
Yeah,
veterans. That'd be cool.
absolutely.
So, but let's get you elected first. Because,
Yes.
folks, here's what we love. We love that he's going independent. We love that he's sticking to his guns. Hard thing about going independent is that you got to do a lot of other work when you're not affiliating with a party. What that means is that by March 3rd, David has to raise 10,000 signatures? 10,000 signatures.
1,000 plus. It's roughly, I think it's 1% of the voter population. And it works out to like 9,600 or something like that. But we're obviously saying like 10,000 plus because there's probably going to be throwaways that the NC Board of Elections discards and says aren't verified or whatnot. Yeah. If I were a Democrat, I wouldn't need the signatures. If I were a Republican, I wouldn't need the signatures. But to get on the ballot, I need 10,000 plus.
Now, folks, a while back, I watched your video where you announced your candidacy, and it was right after Trump had made an announcement basically calling anyone who disagrees with him a traitor. And you made an impact. I saw that it got circulated on a couple of progressive political pages. Um, and that's what I love. Like you're coming in, you're no BS. You've led an empathy tour, but that doesn't make you a softie, right? Like it's
Yeah, empathy does not equate to tolerance of immorality. I've always said this. Empathy does not mean that you're weak by any measure of the word. It just means that you care for those that have been wrongly hurt in this world, and you feel that. Being an empath, you feel the good times, and you feel a lot of the bad times in the world. It doesn't mean that to be empathetic makes you soft or weak. And Donald Trump, go ahead and make duels legal again. We'll see exactly how weak I am.
oh, yeah. I did see a lot of that during COVID. Someone ran with Apparently, the amount of money that they received from a COVID check back in the day was the amount that they could build a guillotine at Home Depot. And I was like, "That's funny."
And
Um,
I've always said too, especially when calling out against ICE abductions or anything like that, and educating people about their legal rights. Make sure you are well versed on your state self defense laws, and make sure that someone is actually presenting legal authority. But whenever you act in defensive measures, not offensive. We are not J6ers, but you do have the right to defend and protect yourself and your persons as well as others, innocent others. So I'm not all about calling out for guillotine or public viewing of things like that, but there was once a point in our nation where duels were legal, where if somebody was corrupt, was evil, was harming innocent others, you could literally call them out in a public street and say, I challenge you to a duel, and handle it that way. So, what I am saying when I say make duels legal again, I'm just saying I'm a law abiding citizen. There's some things in this world that cannot be handled diplomatic.
Thank you for that, and speaking of law abiding, one of your I've pulled from some of your speeches in the past. You've said you're either for the Constitution or you're not. You have come on this show. You are a white man. You've identified as a Christian. Talk about like why being a white male Christian and speaking out is important right now.
Um, Yeah, and I appreciate your work, especially in exposing this weaponization and attack on the chaplain's corps that Hegseth is currently underway in doing. I am a Christian. I'm not ashamed to say it. I was raised Lutheran. I was baptized. I went through communion. Um, we are seeing a mass bastardization and weaponization of the Christian faith today, that is completely opposite and antithetical to Christ's teachings. Its only goal and purpose is to increase power, possession, and control of those that are weaponizing it, Christian nationalists, namely. There's nothing Christ like about any of that behavior, especially the attacks on immigrants or women. A lot of people back it up and say, "Well, abortion is antichrist." No, it absolutely isn't. If you read your Bible, there is nothing antichrist about a woman's rights or woman's choice over her own body. This whole manipulation under the guise of being Christians. You see some of the most vile content on social media and vile comments being made by people that have Bible verses in their profile bios. And it's really made it hard for a lot of Christians today to express their belief in Christ and their objective faith and subjective faith to others. And I'm trying to highlight it along with people like yourself, other names like John Fugelsang or John Pavlitz, and try to let people know that you can be a Christian, not be ashamed of it, and call out this vile, twisted use of the faith. And it's not just Christianity. We're seeing it in radical extremists,
Yes.
that use Islam as an excuse. We're seeing it in radical elements that use Judaism as an excuse and Zionism as an excuse. Look, evil acts are evil acts. Whatever brush you paint it under and try to justify your means. Um, just because you claim to be a certain religion doesn't mean that that absolves you of what you're carrying out against others. So yeah, there is a war, a religious war. It's been going on for a long time too. I'm sure you're well aware. Um, but yeah, it's just I'll never apologize for my religion, but I'll be damn sure to call out others that are using their religion as justification for immorality.
Absolutely. Well, I am excited to see what happens for you in North Carolina. You have certainly put your neck out there, and after years of knowing some of the worst stories, and you finally had enough, and you're doing something about that. So thank you. David, can you tell the audience where they can donate, follow, like, or support you?
Absolutely. If you go to Clayton, the number 4, NC.com, everything is official over there. I'm filed with the Federal Election Commission and the government. I'm just working on collecting signatures from District 5 residents that spans from Boone to Greensboro and then up north to Mount Airy. And we're making good headway. But if you are interested in volunteering for my campaign, you can email my campaign manager at CM. So that's C for campaign, M for manager, CM dot Clayton, the number 4, NC at gmail.com. And we are accepting all forms of volunteerism. And we've got a big push right now from now until March 3rd. And then we've got a lot of fun activities planned after that with mutual aid concerts to give back to the community, a lot of different events after that. So we just have to clear this hurdle of collecting signatures, and then the real fun begins.
Yeah, absolutely. One of you mentioned how folks can follow you on TikTok. One of your hooks I've seen on TikTok is "I'm not MAGA, please don't scroll. I've got a heart and a soul." Did I say it right? I gotta let you
Close,
say it.
close. I'm not MAGA. Please don't scroll. I've got a moral compass and a soul.
He did it. Ah, he did it. Okay. It's a great hook. It's a great hook. I hope you keep that up. Your website's beautiful, super easy to view. Policies, if anybody has any more questions about what those look like. And of course, you can donate there as well. Um, David, today, this has been awesome. And I'm really thankful to know you. I'm proud of, like I said earlier, of you going for it. And, you know, this is faith and courage in action. So this is democracy in action. Is there anything else before we wrap up?
I want to thank you for your service, and I want to thank you for your work. And I very much look forward to reading your book that you're currently working on.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm very, yeah. I kind of freaked out about it last night because I was like, I'm really going after Pete Hegseth. I was like, am I? Is this okay? And I was like, just write it, Lee. Like, right.
You know what? If you act like an ass, you deserve to be called out for the ass you are.
Yeah. Yeah, reading his books and going down the rabbit hole of his mind has been really he has several. I suggest you getting them used. Please don't support him. But if you he's got a few, and honestly, it's really kind of catalyzed me. Now that I'm like, you know what? I'm we're done. Like, I don't agree with anything you're saying, and now that I've read your work, yeah, I have to
No,
do this. So
he's not a warrior with his warrior's ethos. Anyone that calls themselves an alpha, I've got friends that are Green Berets, Navy SEALs, Spec Ops. Not a single one of them
right.
would ever in this life call themselves an alpha. They would never have to be braggadocious or boastful about their prior work, and these are straight up killers.
Yes.
Um, Pete Hegseth is a joke. He's a fraud. He's a Christian nationalist trying to cash in, period.
Amen. Amen. And that is a heck of a statement to end on. Folks, I will see you next time on Follow the Leader. This is David Clayton. Thank you for joining us today. And folks, we'll see you next time. See ya.